Hey everyone, it's Jenny Merritt here, and today I'm going to show you how I make a very basic bird plant stake using glass in the torch flame. So I'm starting already, I've started to make a rather large gather here, and I'm using an Effetre glass COE 104, and in my left hand I have a 1.6mm stainless steel mandrel. So I've made a rather large gather. I'm just going to heat the tip of the steel and transfer that glass onto the rod and wind that through, just flame cut it off in just a second. There we go. Okay, so I've got quite a large gather now on the stainless steel rod, just on the end there. I'm just going to round that up. While I'm doing that, I'm actually using today a blue for the body. I think I'm using cobalt opaque blue. I'm going to be using a green, I think it's the pea green Effetre for the head and wing. I've also got a stringer of white and a stringer of black for the eye, and I'm going to be using a lemon yellow for the beak of the bird. Okay, so tools-wise, I'm also using a press on a graphite plate. You can use mashers if you have those instead. And I think that might be it, but we'll see as we carry on here. So just rounding off the gather on the stainless rod here, keeping that heat in all the time. If you've seen any of my other videos where I make the glass on stainless, you know that you've got to be a little bit more on the ball with keeping the heat into the glass when you're on the stainless rod, of the contraction and the cooling process. The difference between the metal and the glass. Okay, so I've got my graphite press there and my plate. Now, first of all, I'm actually just going to flatten the top of the gather. So I've made a ball of glass with that gather initially, and now you can see there I'm just showing that I've flattened the top. So it's sort of a semicircle, a sort of half sphere that I've now taken it to. And I'm going to get some heat back into that half sphere gather, and then I'm going to take it over and press. There we go. And I don't press it too thin. Remember, we need to keep a fair amount of glass. Normally you would say you keep a mandrel's width thickness of glass either side of your mandrel or your rod. So just showed you there that now I've pressed and I've sort of got, I guess you'd call it almost like a boat shape. And this is the body of the bird, and I'm just taking the rod of glass back into the flame, just heating the tip there. So I'm going to use that rod to pull the glass in a moment and just get a bit of shape into there for the body. So just connecting. I've heated one side a bit more to make it a little bit more soupy, and I'm just gently pulling. Now this is going to be the neck of the bird, if you can see there, just showed you. And I'm just going to flame cut that off. Just let it set up a bit and then flame cut the rod off. Okay, just trying to get that nice and neat there. Now don't worry if when you've pulled it goes out of shape a little bit, as in regard to the flatness. I'm just touching down with that pull there slightly just to flatten the end of what I've done. And I'll explain why in just a second. So now I'm heating the other end of the body and just getting that a little bit warmer, ready to pull. So this is going to be the tail. So I pull this a little bit faster and make it a little bit thinner. You can see that there. And I get a slightly bigger pull on that. Let it set up. And then again, flame cut that rod off. Okay, so basically what I've got now is the body of the bird on the steel rod. I've pulled for a neck and I've pulled for a tail. And I'm just getting some heat back in to the body there, but I don't want to condense down on the neck or the head. So picking up the press again, if you're using mashers, then you can use your mashers for this. Getting some heat in, and I'm going to flatten down again so that, again, the body is now more stable, flat, and in line. Okay, get some heat back in. So, again, making sure every time I've used a tool, on the glass that I get the heat back in straight away. All right, so I'm picking up my pea green rod here and just warming it in the end of the flame, bringing it down, and I'm going to form a smaller gather. And as you can see, as I'm forming that small gather, I'm still keeping the body of the bird towards the flame, flash it in periodically, keep some heat in there, but not letting it get too soupy. And I'm just making a small gather on the pea green rod there. And in just a second, I'm going to use that gather, and I'm just going to plunge it just onto the body, back towards the tail, maybe towards the middle. I might be a little bit too far back with this one today, but it's okay. And I flame cut the pea green off, and basically I've formed a large dot on the body of the bird. And I'm coming in with a flat marver now just to flatten that down, if you can see that now. So now I've got quite a large flattened dot on the body of the bird. Now I'm going to be using a pick here. This is a pointed brass tool I have. You might have a tungsten pick or a rake. And I've just got the heat into that flattened dot and just pulled it to make a wing shape. Get some heat back into the bird so that we don't want it cracking. And that's the wing done. Okay, so I've picked up the pea green again, and I'm going to form another gather. And this gather is going to be the head of the bird. So as you recall, when I started, I pulled a neck end of the body and a tail end of the body. And now I'm forming a gather. Now the reason I flattened down the neck, just that little tap on the marver earlier, was so that I've got that flattened edge to accept the head, that gather, which is what I'm doing now. Let it set up a little bit. Now I'm looking at that and I think the head's maybe a little bit too small for the body, so I'm going to go in, get a little bit more glass and add to the head to make it a little bit bigger here. Always flashing the body in the flame. Okay, so added a little bit more glass there, made the head a little bit bigger, get some heat into it, round it up. Keep rotating, try and keep it balanced on the neck. Heat back into the body of the bird again without melting too much. Okay. So I've picked up a yellow stringer here, but I've actually decided not to go there at the moment. I'm actually going to use the press, and I've got some heat back in, and I'm just going to use the press again just to flatten down so that the head gets a little bit flattened as well. And that will make it slightly easier for me to add the eye, which I'll be doing in just a second. Picked up the wrong rod of glass there. I picked up the yellow. I actually want the stringer of white. So, okay, using a stringer of white now. If you wanted to turn your flame down, you can. Just make sure that you keep the heat into the body of the bird. So, small gather of glass of white there on the stringer. Pop it down onto the head. Let it set up. Get the body back into the flame, get some heat in. And I'm going to use my little marver again here and just tap down on that white dot just to flatten it. There you go. And then I'm going to pick up the black stringer and I'm going to add the pupil to that white dot of the eye. So a little bit of a gather, pop down, flame cut, and I've added the black dot for the pupil of the eye. Now, I only work on one side of the bird. I don't put a wing on both sides and eyes on both sides. And the reason for that is when I make plant steaks, I want to try and keep the cost down. So I'm trying to keep the time taken down, the amount of glass used down. And most people, you'll put your glass steak in your plant and you'll only see it from one side. So that's why I do it. But you could make your bird more fancy. You could add wing and eye either side. Just make sure you keep that heat into the bird. Now I've picked up a full rod here of the lemon yellow, and I've got a little gather on there, and I'm just adding it to the head, just a dot again for the beak of the bird. Let it set up, and then I'm going to go back in, get a little bit of heat back into that, and use the rod just to pull into a more pointed shape for the beak. And there we go. So just pulling the beak into shape and detach the other rod. A little bit of a flash there just to take any sharpness out of that point. Have a quick look. Do I like what I see? Yep, not too bad. And back into the flame. One more flash in the flame, get the heat back into there, trying to get the heat even throughout before it goes into the kiln. And there we go. So have a go. Try and maybe add some decorations. I have added decoration to the body of the bird before I've pressed it in the past. Lots you can do with this one, guys. Thanks for watching.